Can we talk for a minute about our Integrating Heart and Mind workshop?
Absolutely. I'm excited. It's coming up in the fall of 2024.
I'm so excited. We changed the format to make it more accessible to people with like work schedules and personal schedules. And so this time we're going to do it 3 hours on a Friday afternoon or evening, depending on where you're at, and 5 hours on Saturday for 2 different weeks in September.
Yeah, and it's so great. Like if you're finding yourself stuck in like sticky bad patterns or having communication issues or something like that, or if you want to just like get closer and trust yourself or your partner more, this is the workshop for you.
Yeah, and individuals are welcome, couples are welcome. If you're interested in really thinking through how to serve yourself well inside of your relationships, then we've built a workshop that will support you in finding the ways that are just right for you.
To sign up, head over to our website at whydoesmypartner.com/events.
We hope you'll join us. Welcome to the Why Does My Partner podcast.
I'm Jules.
I'm Vicky.
And I'm Rebecca. We're your hosts. We're also couples therapists and messy humans bumbling through our own relationships every day.
We met at a training, and our secret sauce is that we and our partners became fast friends. Between us, we have more than 40 years of experience holding hard relational questions with our clients. We're going to bring those questions here.
And together, we're going to take a stab at answering those questions. This podcast is not a substitute for couples therapy. If something you hear in this podcast stirs something deep within you about your relationship, reach out to a couples therapist in your area.
We also love to hear your questions, so don't forget to go over to whydoesmypartner.com to leave a question of your own. Here's today's question.
Welcome back. This is Jules.
This is Vicky.
And this is Rebecca. And here's our first question in season 6. I just listened to the psychological boundary episode, and I can understand that we should work to not personalize and take our partner's or whoever's reactions about us. But also, isn't it fair to ask our partners not to scoff at us? Like, ostensibly, if we're choosing this partner to entangle our lives with and love us and love them and witness us and witness them, isn't it fair to say this reaction doesn't feel loving?
Well, of course it is. Like, am I allowed to jump in and say yes? Yes.
Of course it is.
Yes.
Oh, you know what I find? And I run into this all the time in my office. And as I've been talking to people, the book's out. I went to a book launch. This was one of the questions that came up, actually. At the book launch party.
Yep.
So like, this is a question I keep running into.
Common.
It's wait a second. Are you saying my psychological boundary should just make me okay with like whatever's happening? Absolutely not. I want to be really, really clear about that. Yeah.
Well,
what are we thinking?
But it's like your psychological boundary helps you figure out what you're not okay with.
For sure.
And that I think that's actually like really important. I think it's a important step that maybe in the nuance of the conversation, I don't want to skip over. Like, it's before I really started practicing this work, I didn't really know what I wasn't okay with. And I would tolerate behaviors that really didn't feel okay and really weren't okay because I have these parts in me that are very geared towards pleasing and appeasing and taking care of other people.
Accommodating.
Yeah,
Totally.
right?
Yes.
And
me too.
so I'm going to tolerate things from that part of me that I shouldn't be tolerating and I should be speaking up around.
Yeah.
But I wasn't.
Right.
And my psychological boundary work has helped me to recognize, oh, you know what? That's not about me and it's not okay.
And
it's not okay. And this piece feels so important to me to name too, as we're with the more nuance of it. The psychological boundary is there to help you have a relationally cleaner conversation about the thing you don't like.
Yes.
Because
that's
the
an
hope
interesting way to phrase it.
Well, the hope here is to separate out feeling and thought from behavior. So let's say
we can keep it about this. The behavior, like
let's say there's
versus what he was thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Where I was thinking the other day, I did this with my little one. She rolled her eyes at me. Right? That's so the rolling the eyes is
not
the
just
behavior.
my house.
It's not just your house. Right. So the rolling the eyes is the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And that part feels disrespectful to me. That falls under my category of disrespect. That's in my not okay world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the thought and feeling that were underneath that eye roll, that's the part I don't want to mess with. I'm not saying I'm not going to influence it. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But I need to get you to think and feel different so that you don't roll your eye at me. That's the piece that I'm calling psychologically invasive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit like, I need you to stop
I need you to stop
experiencing the world in this way.
I need you to stop thinking the way you think.
And feeling the way you feel. That's the part I want to separate out. So the psychological boundary work is so that you separate those two, so that when I'm with my daughter, I can say, hey, and by the way, I'm not even going to set a boundary right now. I'm about to do a direct request. Because direct request is all about asking the other person not to do the thing or to do this thing that you would like them to do, right? So, sweetie, could you not roll your eyes? That lands in a hurt way on mommy's heart. Oh, why? And then she started asking me why. That's such a great question, babe. Let's talk about that. And then we got into this whole conversation about, what are you feeling when you did that? What were you thinking when you did that? What were you hoping when you rolled your eyes at me? What did you really want when you rolled your eyes at me? So we had this whole conversation about how to have a cleaner communication, and a communication I could take in better. And it's clean on my end because I'm not trying to get her to not feel the thing. And I'm not trying to get her to not think the thing. What I'm doing is greeting the thing that preceded the eye roll, but I'm addressing the eye roll separately. So we address the scoff, we address the eye roll, we address the language, we address the volume of the voice through first direct request, maybe more than once. And if nothing is changing and it is not okay, then I would do boundary. This thing that you're doing is okay. This thing that you're doing is not okay. When that thing happens, here's what I'm going to do. And that's about adding protection, not punishment. So it's not about me punish. Yeah. It's about adding protection, not punishment. So I'm not trying to punish my daughter for the eye roll if she won't stop.
Right.
But
I want to laugh. Go ahead, finish.
I might choose to pause a conversation with her in that moment, right? And then the question is, for some people, I get this a lot too, is, well, does that mean I should leave the relationship? Well, I don't know. Is this like a deal breaker level problem? And that's not a question for me.
Right.
That's a question for you.
Only you can decide that. I have to laugh, and I want to own, this was a little bit ago, but and this is me doing U-turn. Oh no, I actually do, in my not great moments, want to change the way Gabe is experiencing the world. So yeah.
Oh yeah, totally.
And there's I'll go ahead and say I don't think I'm alone in that. But so it's not only I want to change the behavior, I actually don't as much want to change my children's experience in the world. But I'll just own it. Yes, I do. You said something about not changing the experience of the world, and I burst out laughing because I was like, oh no, I really do want to change Gabe. I really do.
No, here's the thing: I love that you're naming this, Vic, because that's exactly my point. I think we do want to, and I think it's psychologically invasive when we try to.
I agree with that as well.
And
I wish it wasn't.
I need a psychological boundary because I can be emotionally manipulative.
And I want it to be okay.
I do want to change it. I just believe in my own integrity. That's actually not an okay thing to let myself do.
Well, so
I'm creating this psychological boundary to give myself more space to really move more into how I want to see the world.
But that it's actually not just a psychological boundary, right? This is where this is ninja stuff. We're putting things together.
Yeah.
Because we're now putting together direct requests with psychological boundaries and with containing boundaries, right? The pause. Right.
Well, I'm using the psychological boundary inside of my pause, right? To help me greet the person I'm with.
Right. But before you move from the things you're thinking and feeling to the things you're saying and doing, right? The behavior and the words that you're speaking. Before you move to that, we need a little pause with a little containing boundary. Right? So,
totally.
So
I'm weaving them together like this. It's like a quote.
Right. And here's this thing that emerges, which is like a new way of doing relationships. By the way, massive plug. I've had people coming in and talking to me in my office about the book. And some of the stuff that they're talking to me about, because we've been doing a lot of this work already, right? It's not like so new for some of my people. But one of the things they're really talking to me about is that knowing their why is so freaking important because it keeps them on task. And it helps them remember, that's why I'm practicing my psychological boundary. That's why I'd be practicing the containment. That's why I'd be making a direct request, right? Like it's helping them to integrate all of this into one cohesive practice.
That is so awesome to hear.
I want to add to that. Just about me again. I'm a little selfish today, but
I love this.
Because my why with my son, Michael, and this might be the first time I've actually like named him an example, but it's not it's my why with him is helping me stick to limits that I've given him of, like if I say that I'm going to do this by the count of 5, I better do it by the count of 5. Or if I say that you need to shut off the computer, then I have to stick to whatever consequences coming after. And I've been really loose with that his entire life. And so when I figured out my why, that's what gives me the strength of like, in this moment, it is important for me to be raising a man with integrity. And I have to model for him that you do what you say you're going to do. But I had to actually think about that one night. Like I was reading a book and it was like, what's my why? And I was like, I was describing it to myself. And I went, I want to raise a man with integrity. And I have
a pretty big why.
That. It's a pretty big
It's
why.
a pretty big why.
It's a big enough why. It will give you the emotional oomph you need to do the hard thing.
Yes, because his discomfort is very hard for me. Yeah, similar to like, why is it hard when we disappoint? Like Gabe's scoff the last recording, but Michael's disappointment. It's hard for me to upset him.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
limits upset him. So, but it's that big why is imperative.
Yeah,
it is. It is. It's really helpful. So when I'm thinking about this question and like, is it okay? Isn't it fair to ask? What I'm noticing, caller who's writing in, calling in with this, what I'm thinking is you want to separate out the feeling and thought part. So the idea behind the psychological boundary, and I think I say this, can I tell you all how hard it is to write a book? One of the things I find really, really difficult about writing a book is 2 things. One is that in general, in these experiences, I actually have long ongoing conversations with people, and we're kind of co-creating and understanding these ideas in a nuanced way in conversation. And I can't do that in writing. But the other piece that's really, really difficult that's coming up right now is, I'm already saying it better, but I wrote it 18 months ago. Dang it. Okay, here's my new take on it. Are you ready? This is just the hard piece.
Realization to hear. That's fascinating. Okay.
It's like, it's transforming, and I already wrote it down. Dang it. But that's part of it. This is part of the evolution of thought, right? This was one of the things that was really challenging for me about putting it on paper, is that I knew when I was putting it on paper. Yeah, and later I'll say it different and evolve my thinking on this. So as I'm trying to help people wrap their heads around this, here's what I'm thinking. I'm trying to help us feel a little safer, a little more protected as we face this truth about minds. You happen to be born in a species that's an interconnected one. So longing for relationships is just something you're wired for, and you don't get to do much about that. Sorry.
That's a great way to phrase that. We're just wired that way.
We're just wired that way.
It is what
it is. 2, everybody's mind is different than yours. Nobody actually agrees with you perfectly. Everybody sees the world differently than you. We're all beings, whether we like it or not. We're all beings with different minds. So you're going to see the world differently than the person standing next to you. And I don't care if it was your identical twin. That's still going to be true. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because
Fascinating.
You have all these different nuances in
Yeah.
your DNA and in your own history and what you took in from that event that they didn't take in from that event. And how you see this thing is just different. You don't see reality the same. That's the truth of it. So if I need to be connected to somebody super different than me, how can I feel a little bit more okay with that? That's what the psychological boundary's for, is that I don't have to change you. I don't have to make you more like me in order to be.
I don't need to make you more like me to be okay.
Yeah. That's what the psychological boundary for. Executed boundaries and direct requests are more to handle behavior issues. And containing boundary is more to handle you could lose a pause between what you feel and what you do pretty easy. And if you add one, it sure will help you stay in your integrity. So that's more like an integrity move. And then the physical boundary is more about like physical safety in the here and now and knowing more about what your body wants in this world.
I like to think that the containing boundary, the integrity move, it's about creating a pause within myself long enough that I can figure out what I'm going to do next that feels okay enough.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's not actually about the pause, it's about what happens next.
Yes. The pause just gives you space to make a decision with a little bit more integrated brain space, because you're going to use compassion as part of your pause. And so because the love part is there, it's going to help your brain go, oh, things are a little bit more okay, and move back into a little bit more integration.
And because we've introduced 2 specific keywords that are unique to each of us, we also have kind of like a compass to help us.
A little reminder. Totally.
To help us remember, like, this is how I really want to show up in the world. And so that helps with kind of coming back home to ourselves in those tough moments and figuring out, oh, you know what? It wouldn't feel so good for me to keep doing this way, or for me to make this ask of someone that would ask them to change how they're thinking or feeling. What would feel better and be more in my integrity would be for me to maybe make a direct request, or for me to tell them, that didn't feel so good. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to take care of myself in a way that would feel better. But I'm able to do more of that because of the pause.
Yeah.
Right. I actually asked for more change because of this work, not less.
Right.
Yeah. And something I'm thinking too that caught my attention in this question was this idea of, isn't it fair? And I just want to slow us down for a second, because I think we have these questions about, like, is it okay for me to ask for what I want? Is it okay for me to ask for what I need? Am I justified in it, kind of? And this speaks to me of a larger, harder thing that's like wider than even this question of, like, are we worthy of fighting for and asking for stuff and saying what doesn't feel good? And like, I watch all of us kind of operate from the space of, well, it has to feel justified enough.
Yeah.
I want to like stick my tongue out at all of that. Like I want to scoff at that belief, like not at any of us, but at the belief that
at the societal issue.
Yeah. That there's somehow like there's not enough inherent worth in any of us. Right? That any of us would have to prove our humanity or our worthiness. And I think that systems being what they are, right? Whether we're talking family systems or school systems or other kinds of institutional systems, wherever we're talking, we're set up in a way where we're taught to abandon ourselves. We're taught to move away from ourselves in service of something that is not us. And so part of this work is the return to the self, is the return to, I have worth just for being who I am. And I get to speak for that, because if I don't, who's gonna?
Right. Totally. And who knows you and what you need better than you? And
for many of us, it's not our parents.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking, but for some of us, it was too. And so I find myself thinking, if not me, then who? And some people actually can answer that. But let's pretend for me it was my mom.
But you know what?
And I just don't know.
Can I slow us down for a minute? Not to just interrupt you there, Vic, but I think for folks who who had really well-attuned parents, I think those people come into relationships with a better sense of self. They come into relationships
Oh,
speaking
yeah.
for themselves differently because that was valued.
Well, yes. I don't want to minimize that. And I'm thinking there's a downside when you're young, who's going to speak up for me if your parents are, but like doing it in such a way that you still don't have your own voice? I don't want my mom speaking up for me now that I'm 50.
Right.
It's like, let's pretend she was still alive. Like,
Right.
it eventually I do have to own that somehow. So even if when we were young, people were doing it, but if they were doing it in, I don't know, some weird way or wrong way, whatever, I don't like those words.
Or even exquisite attunement sometimes can be hard because it can give me a space where I don't have to learn how to exquisitely
I think
attune to
that's what I'm
myself.
thinking. Yeah.
Because my parent was so exquisitely attuned to me and spoke for me with all the things. And so I never really had to learn to use my voice. That can be challenging in a
That's what
different
I'm
way.
leaning towards. Like, we still need to learn how to do it for ourselves. And and understanding, this is what you both are talking about with the inherent worth, that I'm allowed to ask for anything in the relationship.
Yeah. It totally is allowed, even the point.
Yeah.
So I get these questions about fairness, or am I allowed to, or is it justified that or you know, is it okay to ask for relational accountability? And you know,
Yeah.
of course it is. And I'm calling this out not because of you, caller, but because I'm naming this larger problem where we assume we have to earn love, and we assume we have to earn worth, rather than operating from a space of deep value that is equal to others. And so that's the piece that I think all this work of boundaries is about, living into equal worth.
Well, I think it can also be scary because I'm realizing if I know that I'm allowed to, and it's fair and it's justified, and I'm allowed to tell, I'm joking here, but in response to the caller, I'm going to make it me. I'm allowed to ask Gabe to stop scoffing at me. And then if he says no to that direct request, I have to deal with that reality as well.
And it may be even that you set a boundary, right?
Yeah.
It may be that you go through grief and you're good not setting a boundary, and that's fine. And it may be that you set a boundary with it, like, okay, I hear you. You cannot control or don't want to try stopping that you're scoffing at me. When you do, I want you to know I'm going to have to end that conversation. It's just too painful for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I go ahead and follow through with that and end a conversation. And then he starts, you know, chasing me down the hallway a little bit and being, what is the big deal? I know you don't. Now my psychological boundary's up. I'm not going to change his mind about this. I know, sweetie, that you don't understand why this is painful for me. Whether you can take it in or not, it is. I'm just going to take care of me. I'll be back in 10 minutes.
But notice your tone too. And
that's because I wasn't urgently trying to change him.
Yes, exactly. Like, you don't get attacky. You didn't get,
this is about not attacking, but speaking up. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
This boundary work is nuanced and complex, isn't it?
Is. I love it.
And doable.
And doable.
And doable.
Complex.
And practicable. And doable. And it will change your brain.
Yeah.
Yes. Lots of practice.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll see you back here next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That wraps up this week's episode. Join us again next week for another Why Does My Partner?
We hope that you continue to listen wherever you get your audio and that you'll follow the show.
To go deeper, join us at one of our workshops. You'll find our next date at whydoesmypartner.com.
Did you know you can ask us your questions?
Your questions are relational gold.
Go to whydoesmypartner.com to either write in or record your question for a future episode.
And here's some gratitudes. Thanks to Al Huberman, our sound editor and podcast production magic maker.
Thanks to every one of you who has joined us for our workshops in the past. We've learned so much from all of you.
And thanks to everyone who's reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts. Your reviews help others to find the show.
Take care of each other best you can.
See you next time.